The subway tunnels had been a mess of broken trains, cracked walls, and collapsed concrete. In comparison, the Green Line was almost completely intact. The concrete didn't show the slightest bit of cracking, and even the metal surfaces showed barely any corrosion. There was far less rubbish down here, too. There was the occasional tin can or barrel, but for the most part the train sat silently, connected to taut cables, waiting for the control or command to get them moving again. When the grade flattened out, we moved through an immense green switchyard beneath the earth. A low thrum surrounding us, and I could feel a dry, warm breeze blowing from deeper down. "It still has power," Glory marveled. "We could do so much for Hoovington, you know? If the radiation level's not too high, we could solve the enervation problem. We could do so much for Equestria." "But where does the power come from?" I asked, as I looked at the green lights set into the ceiling. One cast a wan circle of light spaced along the tracks, but many of them had broken, leaving sickly spots of light amid clogging shadows. "The dams," Rampage replied. "At least that's what the Steel Rangers think. If they hadn't been so fixated on the HMS Celestia, they probably would have set up shop in the dams. Of course, the eggheads are the only ponies that can actually get the power where it needs to go." "So why don't they just work together?" Scotch Tape asked. "Because that would be sane and sensible," Rampage replied. "But the Steel Rangers want to control technology. Eggheads want to fiddle around with it. Not a lot of compromise between the two." I floated out Revolver's map. "So, we need to find the G3 tunnel?" I said, as I looked into the gloom. Something flitted through the distant patch of light. Out came Vigilance and my new sword. Nothing on my EFS. Not a sound to be heard either. After the museum, however, I wasn't trusting bars. Everyone else had frozen too. "What is it?" Glory asked as she hovered above us. Then there was a soft clicking sound. Faint, rapid, and soft. And all around us. "Something bad," P-21 murmured as he loaded a grenade. A low and unnatural growl echoed through the cavernous chamber. "Make that really bad." Suddenly the clicking doubled, and with my night vision I saw a faint shimmer charging right at the six of us. "Here they come," I shouted as I raged Vigilance to fire at the racing blur. The bullets changed and clanged as they struck metal, and there was a magical flash as my target leapt the final distance. I rose to my hooves, meeting the mechanical monster as it rammed into me, claws ripping at my armor and pneumatic jaws hissing as they snapped closed inches from my face. The canine was almost completely metal, save for a little gray blob of brain matter in a jar atop its head. I'd heard about robot ponies with brains, but this was a first. Then, as I struggled with the first, a second raced forward and bit my hind leg. A jerk, and the cyberdog had pulled my leg out from under me. I went down, kicking and screaming as the mechanical monster on top slowly twisted its head and opened its jaws for my throat. Around me, my friends opened fire as more and more of the cloaked robots appeared and attacked. Green lightning flashed from the robot's glassy dome, and my vision blurred as the world twisted around me for a moment. It was all I could do to magic its jaws apart. Then Scotch Tape jumped on its back, squeezing tight with all four hooves as she beat on the dome with a wrench clenched in her claws. The dome cracked, popped, and finally shattered as she pulverized the gray wad with the end of a wrench. The dog gave a spastic jerk and tumbled off of me. I sat up and my horn flashed, 3 magic bullets shredding the transparent brain casing of another one. As big a weakness as their targetable brain was, they could have done with a few more. The machines were strong, fast, and worked together. They also had these disorienting brain zaps. When not engaged in combat, a blue talisman in their chest would flare and they'd disappear. Glory and Lacuna fought side by side, Lacuna strafing the open area around us, and Glory sending emerald beams of death and any shimmers that appeared. I worked with Scotch Tape, more shielding the filly than I liked to admit. I wasn't going to have another Scootle on my conscience. Rampage freely engaged 3 or 4 of them at a time, ignoring the friendly fire from P-21. After his grenades hit, she'd mop up what was left as her own injuries healed. "Why are you grinning like that?" Rampage asked the blue pony. P-21 laughed as he popped open Persuasion and loaded a new grenade. "Oh, this is very therapeutic." Then 4 of the cyberdogs fell upon Glory and Lacuna. I had no idea if they'd jumped or could run on ceilings. One of them clamped his jaws down on Glory's wing and began to pull. The jaws worked, chewing and crushing the appendage as she screamed and tumbled. Lacuna teleported 10 feet up, leaving the cyberdogs to crash beneath her. The minigun swiveled down and blasted at the fallen canines, eroding them with a pillar of fire and bullets. Then 2 more glued to the support pillars raked the alicorn with their brain lightning. "Glory!" I shouted out as I raced to her, slipping into sats to blow the dome off the cyberdog. It died with his jaws clenched around the wing. "Hold still." She grimaced in pain as she trembled beneath it. "I'm not going anywhere." I tried to pry it open with the sword, but it wasn't moving. "Scotch, I need you," I called, returning my attention to the fight. The olive filly raced up, with 2 snapping at her flanks, till I split one dome with the sword and blasted my last 3 rounds into the dome of the other. "Free her! Quick!" I said, as I shoved the second one away. It wasn't quite getting the message that it was supposed to die. As Scotch tape worked, I saw things weren't going well. I had no idea how many of these things there were. Dozens? Hundreds? Thousands? P-21 was trying to use the heavy barrel of the grenade launcher as a bludgeon, his shoulders bleeding from claw lacerations. The canines were now blasting Lacuna with almost continuously with their green zaps, and Rampage was all but buried beneath them. Then one of the dogs bit me and ripped my armor so hard that the shredded saddlebags split and dumped half my possessions across the floor. I shouted and struggled without success. Then one bit of forehoof. Then one bit of rear hoof. And then I knew exactly how Scootle felt as they started to pull. We were about to be ripped to pieces by robotic brain dogs. How could it get any worse? Did I actually just think that? A mechanical growl cut through the cavernous space, echoed, and magnified. Suddenly the cyberdogs went still. My legs were released as they were cautiously backing away. From the gloom approached a massive beast of metal. This was the Deus of cyberdogs. Armor plating covered nearly every inch of its metal black form. Its red eyes glared balefully at the 6 of us. 2 shoulder-mounted cannons pointed right at me. This wasn't a cyberdog. This was the size of a bear. It opened its jaws big enough to crush my head as it snarled in my face. I swallowed as I stared at the grinders inside of its throat. Who the hell had designed this thing anyway? Then it closed its mouth, red eyes staring down at me. Slowly, it turned as if inspecting the battlefield. Its heavy metal claws scraped at the stone as it walked to the fallen Ministry Mayor figures. It stepped right on Rainbow Dash, but the figurine was apparently too awesome to be pulverized by mechanical death beasts. It stopped, then stretched down to bump its muzzle against the tiny orange form of Applejack. From within the beast came a low little whine. Again and again it nudged the bucking figure before it sat down and raised its head for a long, low howl. Looking at the figurine one last time, the giant mechanical beast turned and slowly stalked back into the way that it had come. One by one, the remaining cyberdogs rose and trotted after it, softly clicking claws. Just like that, they disappeared back into the recesses of the tunnel. "What the fuck was that?" Rampage asked as she adjusted her armor. Was that? I don't know," I said as I levitated the orange figurine, sitting and hugging it as I looked in the direction of the security cyberdogs had gone. I found myself imagining that the tiny Applejack was crying, though. We found the tunnel we needed, moving quickly and quietly along the wide open space. There was no debris blocking our way, which also meant there was no cover. Twice, turrets dropped from the ceiling above to rake the tunnel with flashing pink bolts of disintegration magic. Without cover, we had only moments to destroy them before they destroyed us. And we didn't always succeed. "Don't laugh," Rampage muttered as she dropped beside Scotch Tape, the striped filly cursing under her breath in decidedly un-filly-like fashion. "You shielded me," Scotch Tape said awkwardly. "I'm not gonna laugh. I just wonder why you're this old." "Huh?" Rampage blinked as she looked at the olive filly. "What do you mean?" "Well, you look like you're 5 or 6, right? So why don't you regenerate as a newborn? Or my age?" Scotch Tape asked. "Why 5 or 6? Rampage cocked her head, then closed her mouth with a frown. "I don't know. I've never thought about it," she said as she cocked her head. "I mean, I'm 50 or 60 years old now, but I don't know why I'd pop back into this specific age every time." She rubbed at her chin. "Now that you mention it, I don't remember age up older than 20-ish or 30-ish. Had another of the 100 or so mysteries we were dealing with. Right next to, what is the source of all this radiation? It wasn't a lot, but it was consistent. Every pony except Lacuna had taken a dose of Rad-X. I suppose that she was benefiting from it. But even she was seeming a little bit off. It was almost as if she were in pain. "Are you okay?" I asked as I nudged the purple holocorn. She flinched and bit her lip, shaking her head firmly. "The screams are strong. Very strong. I don't want to stay here," she said in a whisper in my head. "Please, let us hurry." But we only got 100 yards further when we came to an immense door that completely sealed off the tunnel. "Hoofington Core Access number 12-411J. "This must go to the core?" I muttered as I thumped the door, hard as concrete. "Don't suppose we can pick it?" I asked P21 with a grin. He gave me a look that suggested that the question opened up a whole new world of how stupid I was if I was serious. I consulted the map. "Okay, good news. We don't have to get through the door. Look for sewer access 12-99. It should be in that wall." I pointed to our left. Gloria had found it. Her wing still wasn't right, even after taking a healing potion. Of course, the hatch was locked, but P21 got out his pins and got to work. 2 tries later, he had it open. This tunnel was far ranker and the air heavy and wet. Oddly, there wasn't any mildew or rot down here. I suppose the radiation killed everything. There were also no lights, so I turned on my pip-buck lamp. Scotch Tape did the same. Lacuna's glowing magic illuminated the rear as we entered the tunnel. Everything curved, so we couldn't see how far we had to go. "Think we can get DJ Pony down here?" Rampage asked. "All this quiet's freaking me out." "Doubt it, but..." I turned my radio and set it to search for a signal. Static, static, static. Then a mare spoke in a rush. "It's Team Delta. We're trapped in adjunct 33-99B. The shields are up. Please lower the shields. We've got critical information for Canterlot. The sun has risen. The moon has not been freed. The stars are still in play. I repeat, Team Leader, the stars are still in play. This is Team Delta. We are trapped in adjunct..." And the message kept looping over and over again. I looked at Rover's map, but couldn't find an adjunct 33-99B anywhere on it. "You think one of those teams? The ones who knew about the bombs?" Gloria asked from behind me. "I suppose," I said, wondering if the broadcasting had been looping for 2 centuries with a message that had never reached its recipient.